Welcome to the AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Professor Ashley Braganza. And for this episode, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Yves Bollinger from Serviceplan. Yves, thank you for taking the time to come and speak to my listeners and me today. Before we get started, could I just ask you to introduce yourself and introduce Serviceplan, please?
Thank you, Ashley, for having me. Yes, my name is Yves Bollinger. I'm a general manager for Planet Studios, which is part of the Planet Group, which is part of the Serviceplan Group. I'll make this a little bit easier for you guys. So Serviceplan is an independent European international ad network. It consists of three parts mainly, which is Serviceplan, which is the creative agency part. Then there's Media Plus, which is the media agency part. And then there's Planet. And we cater mostly to platform development and digital experiences. And Planet Studios is the innovative hub of Planet. So we are at the frontier of everything new and are working in AI for 1.5 years, I would say.
Great, thank you. Yves, at the heart of this conversation is the relationship between AI and blockchain. And what I'd like to do is ask you to just perhaps start by taking our listeners who may not be familiar with the notion of blockchain, maybe just explain what blockchain is, and then we can maybe talk about the relationship between AI and blockchain.
Yeah, so at the core, a blockchain is a decentralized ledger, more or less. Like it's a big book where you can write all sorts of information into, and that information is then stored decentrally on lots of nodes, which has the effect that information cannot be tampered with. So once information is written on the blockchain, it's there permanently, and no single entity, no corporation, no single person has the ability to change that information. And that makes it a very, very secure and trustworthy layer of storage of information. And there has been a lot of talk about, cryptocurrency, NFTs, and all that kind of stuff that also lives on the blockchain. But the way we are using it and the way I think most serious people are using it these days is as a decentralized source of information.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for making that a nice, straightforward, understandable explanation of some really complex technology. How is AI and blockchain then connected? What's the relationship here?
Yeah, and that's the fun part in all this, because blockchain really had a hard time in the last couple of years because it was not, it was seen as speculative, and cryptocurrency was out there, and a lot of people were just using that to get rich really fast. And when we started to develop AI agents, which is actually what we started with 1.5 years ago, we encountered several problems that we needed and wanted to solve. One was how do agents identify themselves? So in our vision, we think that in the future, there are millions of agents interacting with each other. And if you deploy an agent to do a task for you, you really want to be sure that that agent is really the agent that it seems to be. So if you book a flight, for example, you do want to make sure that that agent is really from Lufthansa and not from someone else. So you need a way to identify an agent. And then also you do need a way to, that's what we also thought about, how do agents find each other? So we do believe, and we see this already happening, that there are no more single agents doing tasks, but there are actually teams of agents working together autonomously. This means an agent needs the capability to find another agent to deliver a task that you prompted that agent to do. So findability is a big issue that needs to be solved. Then payment of agents. We do believe that we are on the brink of an economy of agents, of an agentic economy, and that means there needs to be money exchanged between those agents. So if one agent hires another agent, money needs to flow, because otherwise you simply don't have an economy. All those things are already built into the blockchain. Those problems have all been solved years ago by the blockchain. So we thought, well, the smartest thing we can do is actually combine agentic AI with blockchain technology, create a protocol that we call the Masumi Protocol to allow agents to be registered on the blockchain, to be findable on the blockchain, and actually to be monetized by their creators via the blockchain.
So tell us a little more about this protocol then, please. The Mazumi Protocol.
Yeah, the Masumi Protocol is actually one of 3 building blocks that we created to make the agentic economy, as we see it, as an independent trust layer for agents possible. So the Masumi Protocol is at the heart of this. It's a blockchain-based protocol. We are using the Cardano blockchain, which for several reasons could also be another blockchain. In the future, it will be blockchain agnostic, but for now, we're using the Cardano blockchain. I'm really happy with it. And what the protocol does is basically it gives the agent an identity. The task that an agent fulfills is being hashed, and that hash is also being written on the blockchain so that we can control that an agent has actually done the job that he claims to have done. It gives the identity. It's the payment protocol that's also run via a smart contract over the blockchain. So if one agent hires another agent and that hash is being written on the blockchain, then the payment is automatically being triggered and money flows from one agent to another. Now, if the agent fails, which can happen for various reasons, that hash is also being placed on the blockchain and there's no money being dispersed. So all the handling of the agent, the refund mechanism, the identity, that's all being handled via smart contracts on the Cardano blockchain.
That sounds fascinating. So can you give us an example of how this would work? I mean, yeah, how would this actually happen in practice then?
Yeah, so think about one case is you ask Siri, for example, and you'll tell Siri, well, listen, I'm planning this wonderful trip with my family to New York over Christmas. I have a budget of 10,000 K. I want a small boutique hotel. My daughter is 11 years old. I wanted to have a nice experience somewhere in downtown New York. Please come back with a whole itinerary of this. Then the agent actually will start, and in the background, your agent will ask several other agents, a booking agent, a flight agent, an experience agent, a restaurant agent, to come up with all the itinerary. And then it will come back, that agent team will come back to you with a final plan, a suggestion, that you then can instantly buy. And in order for this to work, those agents need to find each other. As I said earlier, it's a team of agents that then works together to create that wonderful trip of yours to New York. They need to be sure you don't want to be, in a hotel in New York and tell everybody, Siri told me that I have a room booked here. That might not be the best way. So they need to be accountable for actually what they did and for the booking. And payment needs to happen. And also for this, you really want to be sure that, as I said, your Booking.com agent is really your Booking.com agent. So that would be one example of an end consumer agent team that's working. There are tons of other examples in terms of research, of analysis, where teams of agents will work together to create really in-depth reports, to do some research, to do analysis, all sorts of things that one agent is not capable of doing alone, but needs a team of teammates, of specialized agents that perform tasks that are really very unique to their capabilities.
That's really interesting in terms of, and thank you for that example. What made you give the protocol the name that it has?
Okay, that's a good question. We get that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
The true story is that my boss Sebastian Küppers, who came up with all this, always named his side projects Masumi. So for 10 years, and this started as a notion, as a side project. So that's why it was called Masumi. But we discovered while working on this actually that Mazumi means ink in Japanese. Mm-hmm. And as we're writing information on the blockchain, and you kind of sense where this is going, it makes total sense to call it the Sumi suite. So we have Mazumi, which is the protocol, which means ink in Japanese, writing stuff on the blockchain. We have Sokosumi, which is the agentic store where humans can actually buy agents and other agents can find agents. And that means warehouse in Japanese. And then there's a middleware, which is called Kodosumi, which has also to do with machinery work. So it kind of makes sense to have the Mazumi protocol, the Sokosumi store, and the Kodosumi middleware.
Wow, that's really interesting, and it's always good to understand what the backstory is in terms of how a development kind of evolves over time. So thank you for that. What are some of the more recent developments then for AI agents? And you've got the 3 protocols. Tell us about perhaps the agent or the agentic protocol and what some of the developments are there, please.
Yeah, I mean that development, as you and probably the listeners also know, is rapidly evolving, which is why I think it's even more important to be aware of the trust layer that is created, for example, by Mazumi, because we do think it's really important, especially from a European perspective, to build whatever you're building on a secure, compliant, MiCA compliant, EU AI Act compliant, GDPR compliant framework that is transparent. Mazumi, for example, is open source as well, so everybody can check out, check out the documentation, see what's going on. That's very important to us as well, because what we see, and this is coming back to your question, is that, or what we also, one of the reasons why we started this is because we do think that for the first time in maybe 10 to 15, 20 years, companies actually are in the driver's seats again, because they're having all the data, the APIs, the analysis, the journalistic articles, the research being done, the client data that is used by agent to create value for those companies. And those companies, because the frameworks with which agents are built are getting more and more stable, whether you use CrewAI, LangDoc, or any other one, they are all compatible to our protocol, and they're getting more stable. So companies are actually in a position where they can create their own agents based on the data that only they have. So they're not reliant on big tech anymore to reach their end customers, to monetize the data that they're having. They can use a framework, build an agent, connect it to the Masumi node, for example, and then being automatically listed on Sokosumi, being automatically listed on Adobe Workforce, for example, and create a completely new ecosystem where they can work with their data and monetize their data. And that is really new. And then in terms of technical developments, we're having Google just came out a couple of days ago with an agent to agent payment protocol, which is still a Google protocol, versus Mazumi, which is an open framework, agnostic, and fully transparent protocol everybody can use. But you can also see that also the big tech players have seen the potential that lies in there and are also seeing now step by step what's actually missing to create that agentic economy. And then technology is getting easier and easier. So we have MCP protocols now that do not rely anymore on APIs being there. They can just, being a protocol, they can just access information and data on a very simple and easy way, and make it even easier to create own agents and create an own agentic workforce. So there's a lot of things in parallel happening. And the speed is tremendously. We're moving so fast, which is why we're really happy, to have a solid foundation for that ecosystem to develop in a safe space and being used by almost everybody.
Wow. You mentioned a protocol. Forgive me. It was the MCP.
It's the MCP.
CMCP. Just explain what is that? Because I like to try to get underneath the jargon in the podcast as well, please.
Yeah, it basically is a protocol that's been out for, I'd say, feels like yesterday, so it's probably 3 months or 4 months. It's out there. And what it allows actually is to access information from websites, for example, really easy. Like think of it like a plug and play data pipeline from various sources that can feed into your agent. That is different from APIs that we've used so far, where you're reliant on an API to access information, and that API is hopefully very clean and tidy and delivers every time. So MCP opens another way to actually access a wide variety of servers, of applications, of websites, and derive information from them in a very easy fashion that agents can work with very easily.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. So what I'm picking up then is there is a significant amount of technology. There are the protocols that allow for these agents to communicate with each other across organizational boundaries. How does an organization actually adopt these technologies? What should an organization be doing?
There are various options actually that you have. So I think one is an organization could create based on the data they're having. So if an organization sits on exclusive data, so be it journalistic products, for example, analytics data, data of population. I mean, everything that really makes you unique, you can just start monetizing this. In order to do this, what you do is you pick your favorite agentic framework, True AI, for example, whatever it might be, it doesn't really matter. You create your agent and you connect it to the Masumi protocol, for example, and then you launch your agent and you monetize the data. And at the moment, that's still very much human to agent. So on Sokosumi, for example, you can hire an agent, pay him a couple of credits, which is equivalent to euro. You don't have to have a subscription or anything. Just hire an agent, for example, to analyze a web page, to optimize the web page for SEO. So there are a variety of agents. They can do a variety of jobs, and the company can just release their agent to the marketplace and sell that data in that way. Also, doing this enables other agents to find that agent, which again triggers monetization of your exclusive data you can have, for example. So that's one way you can interact as a company. Create your own agent, monetize data you're already having, create a new touch point for your money, for your data to actually monetize it and make money with it. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is to extend, to use it in customer interaction, for example. So we do think that the way that we interact with the internet in the future will be very, very different from the way we are doing it now. So now we are used for long formats, we are used to visit websites. All this will probably go away to a certain extent. So we will hire agents to do a lot of work for us. We will not jump to websites anymore that much as we did, which currently also is a big problem for the digital industry that was reliant very much so on search traffic, on people visiting websites, on people clicking banners. All that might disappear to a certain extent. So you need to be agent ready. You need to make your websites ready for agent visits because AI will be probably your best customer and also the gatekeeper of relying your products or your services to the customers because they will not visit your website that much anymore. So that's another thing a company should do to get ready for what's coming is to really optimize on agentic traffic, optimize their websites, aside from creating their own agents. So I think those are two very, very central things companies need to think about at the moment.
And I really like this idea about an organization being able to take control of its AI agents, develop its agents, and more importantly, exploit its data and monetize its data. how would a small or a medium-sized, let's deal with medium-sized businesses just for a moment. How would a medium-sized business that doesn't have huge amounts of IT resource or huge amounts of IT expertise, how would, and very often, for instance, might be owner managed. So, people under time pressure when they're running their own business. How would that kind of business be able to use these technologies, Yves?
Yeah. We haven't even touched on one aspect that is really also very important, especially for smaller companies, and that's not necessarily releasing or creating your own agent, but using an agentic workforce to solve tedious tasks, right? So one example is I was at a fair 2 days ago at the Mexico in Cologne, and I got approached by a university, and they said, yeah, well, if we schedule the new curriculum, we have 700 teachers, and we have 3 people doing nothing but, aligning dates with the teachers we're having. And it takes a lot of time, and it's not work that people actually thrive or love doing. So that's a very good case for agents, because that's something agents can do, for example. So that's one example of, a smaller company using an agentic workforce to relieve its own workforce from tedious tasks and to be just much better in, creating value on that level by using agents, instead of creating their own agents. And if we talk to clients, in every company, there's tons of use cases where you can start being, a competitor analysis, for example, is something where, usually entry level juniors start, getting their first teeth sharpened and do this all the time. And a lot of them, after 1 year of doing this, will probably very happily say, well, I can now, divert this to an agent who does that task and has access to various sources and creates those reports. So there's this whole bunch, this whole universe of use cases where with very little effort, companies can start using agentic workforces to create value and actually to take some pressure out of their workforce that then can do other things that might be a better use of their time. So efficiency is one big thing. Also in terms of, creativity, just thinking about what are the things, write a little diary, just think about what am I doing actually every day that is just busy work that keeps me from doing the meaningful stuff that I actually need to do. And if you do this for 2 days, I'm sure everyone comes out with a lot of use cases where agentic workforces can be used. And then you don't have to program them. I mean, there's marketplaces like Sokosumi, others will follow. I'm pretty sure. There's, of course, the big players who have their own agentic workforces integrated in their software if you want to go that way. So if you're using Adobe, they have agents. If you're using Salesforce, they have agents, and so on and so on. Google, of course, Microsoft, we all know them. They all have agents, but they're all in their golden little, habitat. And in their free marketplace, like Sokosumi, for example, where you can just buy for a couple of euros, buy an agent that helps you complete your task.
So if let me stick with this medium-sized business, and I like that differentiation between you don't have to build your own, you can use one that almost, I get the impression you can pull it off the shelf and use it. But with most things, very often, even if you're buying a suit, you pull it off the shelf. But you know what it's like. There needs to be some tweaks to it to make it really fit your business. How much tailoring, how much customization would a business need to do to an agent that it might access?
Yeah. That's a good question, actually, because that's also something that evolves within our organization. So as I said, we started with Mazumi, and pretty soon we encountered what you just described, right? So what we call now ready-made agents or services is not for everyone and for every case, obviously. So and this is all very young. So what's happening with us in our organization, with the clients we cater to, is the following. So we have ready-made agents that you can buy in Sokosumi, no subscription needed, you just buy whatever you need. Then we create solutions. Those are agents that are quite powerful and they take a while to develop, but at the same time that have the potential to scale really well because they cater to use cases that are important for a lot of people. I'll give you one example. We created a so-called policy monitor. And that policy monitor is an agentic team that goes out and goes behind paywalls to receive information and data, and it creates reports that are very specific to a specific field the client is interested in, mm-hmm. be it European regulations, for example, in the fashion industry. So that's a very tight topic, but you need to be very aware of what happens at the legislature, at the lawmaking part. You need to be very aware of what is China doing. You need to be very aware of what is your competitors doing. So instead of having a lot of people spending a lot of time doing this, you can use the policy monitor to access really premium data behind paywalls, to compile not only a report, but also let the agents give you an indication what that might mean for your particular business. So the policy monitor, for example, gives you a report. It cites all the sources that you have. And by the way, those sources are real. So that's not hallucinated. So you can, everything that's in the policy monitor, you can check the source, and it's all validated and based on true facts instead of hallucinations of a large language model, which is very important for our professional clients. And then not only you have the report and you have the sources, but you have the implications for your business. So the agent says this fact, for example, you should now consider do this and this and this, and this has the potential risk of so and so many euros. So you get a really very, very good way forward from that agentic team. Now that is a solution that we have built for one particular client, but now talking to other clients, we see there's a lot of demand for this. So we'll take the basic, the engine, if you will, and we tweak that engine to fit the sources that other clients might need, to fit a way in which the information shall be presented, and to tweak the outcome aside from the report. And that makes it really affordable for a lot more clients because the heavy work has already been done, and now we just need to tailor it to the specific needs of our clients. So that's a solution. So one engine that can be useful for a multitude of clients. Example, the policy radar. And then there's, of course, always custom built possibilities. So if a client says, I have that very use case, it's my data, I don't want this to go anywhere. It's a very specific use case, then we just build an agent or an agentic team from scratch for that particular client and for that particular client needs.
Well, you preempted one of my questions, which how do you deal with hallucinations? But you answered it already. That's really interesting because what that tells me is that actually small businesses and medium and small businesses can now use these agents, make use of the data that they have to help them improve their own business processes to become more efficient and to become more effective. It doesn't need to just be, everything doesn't need to be big scale and large. They can just do this in quite nice, tight packages of work. How are these AI agents going to affect the development and the evolution of ecosystems, Yves?
Yeah, I think one very current effect, and we can see this in the wild, so to speak, is the decline of search traffic, for example. Of course, it has a lot of facets, right? So one is the digital business, lots of digital business models that rely on human traffic on websites. And just think about how many these are. They will need to adapt to an agentic future where most of the traffic will either not hit their websites anymore, because the main questions and links have already been answered in some sort of agentic framework, be it a large language model or a smaller agent. So that's a very big shift for a lot of businesses to cope with this and to get ready for that future. And now I forgot the question.
How is agentic AI going to affect ecosystems?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so platform business will change dramatically due to the lack of traffic coming to websites. But then on the other hand as well, there's an opportunity for that, right? I mean, you need to pivot, and lots of companies are actually in a good position to do that, because almost every company has the resources and the treasure trove of information that only that company owns. And being part of that new ecosystem that will be characterized by agent-to-agent interaction, and give that 2 or 3 years, I'm pretty sure most of the traffic on the internet will be between agent to agents, and to be part of that new ecosystem, of that new platform that will be created. I think that's the most strategic challenge any company faces now. And then there are different ways of coping with that, from optimizing your websites to creating your agents, to thinking about what actually will have value in the future. What do I do with my clients, for example, my CRM system? Now I can communicate very differently, because one-to-one communication actually is possible, and it's not anymore a dream that we follow that never really worked. Now it really does work. So tons of possibilities that change the environment that the businesses operate at the moment.
One of the things you mentioned a little earlier was the how agentic AI and AI agents may well no longer require people to do kind of first line tasks. Some of these so-called boring, mundane tasks. I have to tell you personally, I'm getting even more attached to my boring and mundane tasks, because I don't want some agent to come and replace some of those that make up part of my entire work package and workload, as you can imagine. But this is clearly going to affect jobs. Okay, what impact do you see agentic AI, and particularly now this combination of AI and blockchain, having on jobs?
Well, I think that I'm not sure if jobs really, I mean, that's up for grabs, right? I mean, what blockchain does, it's probably blockchain itself, and the combination of AI and blockchain, that does not have an effect on jobs per se. I mean, it's AI that has the effect on jobs. Blockchain just adds a trust layer to AI and to agents, and what I said earlier, monetization and so on. But what will happen, I believe now, as we speak, might be different in 3 months completely. But at the moment, I do think that there will be a shift in jobs. So I think we'll have different jobs. Lots of jobs we will lose today, but it will shift to other jobs. So you will need to have people to oversee agentic workforce. You will have people to be able to manage agentic workforce, to govern agentic workforce. You will have people to that need to come up with strategic measures, and so on and so on. But I think the biggest problem, and we see this already, is actually for the young people coming out of universities and coming out of education, because traditionally the jobs that agents or agentic workforces will do are traditionally the jobs exactly those youngsters in their first job were tasked to do. And that's a really problem. That's a big problem, because if we don't find a good way to incorporate those young people into the workforce, we will have a really big problem in the future, because then just the expertise of overseeing artificial intelligence will cease to exist, because we failed to educate people coming from their educational backgrounds into their first job. And that's something, in my perspective, that's actually the biggest problem at the moment. It's not so much, people that are already senior and established in their jobs. They will pivot and they will shift, and there will be some back and forth. But especially young people coming into their first jobs, that's a big task we need to tackle.
And longer term, what do you see the impact being on society?
Yeah, and I think that's also something that's very interesting to ponder. I think if we have less people in work, which some people say we won't, I said we'll shift, and I do believe we will. But bottom line is, I do think we'll have less people in work than we had in the future, than we had in the past, and that will mean we really have to think about who are we taxing, right? So if we have less people in work, does it make sense to only tax income from work? And if we do this, then we'll have less money to spend on things that a society needs to care about, like streets and hospitals and all those things that are dear to a developed democracy. And that's a true danger. So we need to come up also policy-wise with new ways of creating value for society and taxing the units and entities that profit most actually from that development. So that would be my fast take.
Yves, thank you so much for sharing your insights, sharing your thoughts, unpacking this whole notion of AI, blockchain, agentic AI, and giving us some really good and clear examples of how these technologies are not just at some point in the future. You can almost see that they are beginning to come in place and impact how we live our lives even today. So I'd just like to say thank you for joining me on the AI Adoption Podcast.
Thank you very much, Ashley. It was a great pleasure, and it was really, really fun and a good conversation. Thank you very much.